Hello and welcome to Open Door Philanthropy. I'm sitting here with Bill Villafranco. Did I get your last name correct?
You got it.
And he's from the Virginia B. Toulmin Foundation, where he's a trustee and a CEO. We're going to dive right into talking about Bill. Bill, where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
It's great to be here this morning, Dave. Thank you. I grew up in a small little town called Nanuet. It's in Rockland County, New York, not far from New York City. And, my childhood was great. I have an older brother, a younger sister. I had two great parents. We lived in a very tight-knit community. And I've got nothing but fond memories of my childhood.
What did you grow up? What did you do growing up? What were your hobbies? Did you play baseball, Little League?
I played baseball. I played football. I was okay. My brother was a superstar, and he's older than me and trying to live in his footsteps. But even though it was great, it was great to have such great friends on those two team sports. And in fact, when I got hurt my senior year, I was a catcher and had an unfortunate incident at home plate where my shoulder was dislocated. It showed the value of my teammates and my coach and how great they were to me my senior year. Always looking forward to being the starting catcher on the varsity team. And 2 games in, boom. And just the teammates just rallied around me for the rest of the year. It was really terrific.
That's great. Any artistic pursuits?
No, I wish I did play an instrument. I mean, the guitar in the background's not mine. It's my wife's, and I wish I did play, but I do love to listen to music.
Well, it looks great there.
She's quite good.
Growing up, Hugh, you're now a professional philanthropist, but growing up, do you have a early memory of doing something generous? Like, for instance, do you remember the first time you ever gave something to somebody or made a gift?
I do, actually. My mom, who's since passed, used to tell the story quite often about being on a family vacation in Cape May, New Jersey. And I got up early with my saved allowance money and I ran to the gift shop and I bought her a little Coca-Cola candle. And I gave it to her because I knew she was having a really rough period. Her mom had just passed. And she talks about that story, or told that story often. And it always made me real happy. And she used to tell me that, Billy, you love to help other people. And it's innate in who you are.
A Coca-Cola candle.
Yeah.
Was it just Coca-Cola scented, or was it in a?
It was in a Coca-Cola glass that read Coca-Cola that smelled like Coca-Cola. I'm not quite sure she liked the fragrance, but the intent is what she really liked.
I'm interested. I wouldn't mind Coca-Cola candle. That sounds nice. And it sounds like you're pretty young there.
I was. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah, very good. I think it's a question we ask a lot of our guests, and a lot of them, especially like the family-oriented, family foundation folks, often it is something that they gave to their mother. I think that makes sense. So then later on, you spent years on Wall Street before you got into the nonprofit world. So I'm interested to know what drew you from Wall Street into philanthropy. But first, what got you into? I mean, other than the obvious, like that's a place to make money. Was there anything else about Wall Street that drew you there?
Yeah, I think my experience in college is what really solidified my wanting to go to Wall Street. My experience at college was very unique in that I paid for most of my college, and my sophomore year in college, I went to St. Bonaventure University in Olean, New York. I needed to make more money. I was a janitor cleaning up after the basketball games, and I went to a local bar owner who at one time, this bar called the Burton was very popular. Bob Lanier went to St. Bonaventure, and it was the bar to go to for the college students. And it became more of a local bar. And I saw it as a potential opportunity for me to make more money. So my sophomore year, I went to him and he would invite. He's like, we're fine, we're happy, you college kids, go somewhere else. But then when I came back my junior year, I had become close with him in that I stopped in there often and we just sat and talked for a while. And great man. And he eventually broke down and said, sure, if you'd like an opportunity to work here and you can have a few of your friends come work as well. So it was my end of my first semester junior year. And he allowed me the opportunity to really bring the bar to life, which I did with a number of my friends. In my senior year, by my senior year, he had made so much money that we negotiated to buy the competing bar in town. And it's that made me realize that I could do a lot by helping other people with the skills that I was taught growing up and then in college. So Wall Street just seemed to be the right place for me, where I can help people attain goals by using discipline, which I learned throughout my life in helping them attain those goals. So it was a natural transition for me to go to an area that I felt I was well tuned to perform well in.
I think a lot of colleges would love to see their graduates go into the finance sector because it increases the likelihood that they'll one day be able to be generous and make large gifts.
Yeah,
I
and
was
Dave,
in college, and there was a huge. I didn't really understand at the time. There was a huge focus on making us all iBankers, and I realize now that's because they wanted to be able to fundraise from us later.
yeah.
How much of that, when you were at St. Bonaventure, which is in some part, there's tuition and other revenues, but there's a lot of philanthropy that goes into funding a school like that, Dickinson as well. How much at the time did you understand that?
Very little. Very, very little. Much of the students were isolated at that time from those kinds of activities.
Yeah.
It wasn't really until recently, and I'd say maybe a decade ago, that students really play a major part now in the philanthropic efforts. Now, the sports programs always, of course, but not the students per se. And in fact, I just went back to St. Bonaventure just last week after 26 years to visit with the finance students as well as the PA students. And I brought a friend of mine who was in a horrific car accident and had a facial transplant and double hand transplant. And we talked about Joe's life, and we talked about my life and the intersection of St. Bonaventure and the Franciscan values with helping others. And it was really remarkable. And we made a transformational gift to Bonaventure to help them as well. But the point is, though, that now students more than ever can tell the story maybe even better than those that are charged with finding those that can give.
Absolutely. You mentioned Franciscan values.
Yeah.
I'm Jewish. What are those?
So community, compassion, integrity, honesty, those core values that we hope most or all of us have innate in us. But in the Franciscan way, it's a big part of how the Franciscan friars live. And it's a way in which the school is actually centered. It's around those values. And
this is St. Francis?
Yes.
Who was he?
St. Francis of Giving. So,
really?
Yeah. And
is he the patron saint of giving?
He is.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And that's really the friars are so present on campus, and it becomes a big part of the philosophy and all the social aspects of St. Bonaventure.
Very interesting. So I live here in Waterville, Maine. Growing up, my parents were professors at a place called Colby College. In fact, I'm sitting in my mom's. This is my mom's retirement chair from Colby.
Oh, how great! Oh, that's great. Love it.
It is nice and quiet. My normal chair is squeaky, so for interviews, I switched to this one because it's a good solid wood chair that doesn't make too much noise. And I guess that's a gift. That was the final gift that Colby gave to my
it's great
family. And as I understand, your nieces currently go to Colby College.
They do.
Great school. Colby has become something of a national model for what engaged, place-based institutional philanthropy can look like. They've set some records for raising money. They've raised over $1 billion in the last 10 years. The president, David Green, is a tremendous fundraiser. They have they have a lot of stuff going for them when it comes to fundraising. But they've also made, one of the reasons I moved home and moved on funded list back here, is they've made a lot of investments into the town. We have an arts center downtown. They've refurbished some of the buildings. They built a hotel. And our downtown is really revitalized largely because of Colby. And so it's not just the philanthropy that goes into running the college. It's that they've become, we don't have a whole lot of foundations here in Maine. We have a few notable ones, but Colby has really stepped up in that regard. As someone who does philanthropy for a living, what do you make of what Colby is doing? Do you have an opinion on it?
I do actually. I think it's remarkable how private philanthropy can actually lead the charge in regentrification of an area that may have been overgrown, if you will, or unfunded for a long time. It's one thing to fund a college, and if you look at the other side of it, it's St. Bonaventure, where you have a college that receives most of the funding and a town that receives very little. So when you go to St. Bonaventure, you can feel that you're going through a town with no future, no life, to a campus which is vibrant.
Mm-hmm.
When you go and hear about Colby, it's quite the opposite. It's about private philanthropy stepping up and saying, yes, the college is really important, but we need to grow our downtown. We need to make that a destination as well. And the off-campus housing that they've built, like you said, the arts center that they've built, the restaurants.
They have a building downtown now.
Yeah, the restaurants that come along with that.
Yep.
Right? The idea that this hotel can house and employ people, it's the opposite at Bonaventure. There is only one major organization up there. It's Cutco, the knives. Other than that, there's nothing. And it's a very different.
Dickinson and Carlisle, very similar. There's a limestone wall that the campus is like right in the town, but there's this wall, and then once you go over that, you're in Carlisle, and then you go on to campus, you're in campus. And Colby's actually up on a hill. And when I was a kid, it was very separate. Colby was up on the hill, and Waterville was down here with its heroin problem and its decaying industry. And now that it is much more intertwined, I have breakfast with Colby students every day at a place called Solidified downtown. And it's not the energy of having them around, right, and just all the activity, right, and it brings some young people into the town. I get to see license plates from pretty much every state every day, and it really has, particularly their investment in the arts center downtown has been really great. We now have arts tourism as one of the city's largest sources of revenue.
And can I just say one thing, Dave? My nieces feel so safe downtown now, right? Because there's activity, there's beautiful lighting. Like they were just with me last weekend, and they were telling me all about the downtown. It's just interesting that it happened to be around the time we were going to be speaking. But they were telling me, one's a senior, one's a freshman, how safe they feel going down there.
Oh yeah,
and that's important.
It was a little dicey for a while, for sure, but that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Have you not been?
I have not. I'll be there for graduation for my.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me know when you're up here. We can hang out.
That'd be great. I'd love
it. So similar question to so when you said when you were at St. Bonaventure, you didn't really know too much about how things were being funded there. Do you think your nieces have an understanding of what's going on at Colby? Like why is it that the downtown has become safe? Like
I do.
All the work that's gone into that.
I do.
You think they understand that?
Because they see it. Right? They see all the trucks, they see the new buildings, they see things happening. I think isn't something opening this year downtown?
Oh, they're building, so perhaps it's honestly hard to keep up with.
Right.
Right now you can't drive through, they're building a new dorm on campus, and my shortcut is temporarily I have to go around, and I'm not complaining, it's great. But I mean, like, compared to Dickinson, I went to campus a couple of years ago, and it's exactly the same as when I went there, which is a couple decades now.
It reminds me a little bit of Bentonville, Arkansas. Although Walmart is a major employer there, Colby is a major employer, but they went and they built a huge downtown. Their emphasis was building a destination for people to come to.
Yep.
Very different than what we have up at St. Bonaventure, but very similar to what you're doing at Colby with the I think it's the Alford family, if my memory is correct. Alphon family, right?
That is our one big foundation. The one billionaire in our history is Harold Alphon, is from here. I used to play golf with him when I was a kid.
Oh wow,
great man. Dexter Shoes.
Right, Dexter Shoes.
And he sold. Well, I think the real money came when he sold that to a man named Warren Buffett. And he got the Class A stock, whatever, in exchange for that. And the foundation has done a really great job of everything. But it is somewhat strategic for Colby to do this. Because now that Waterville has a nice downtown, right, which isn't necessarily true for some of the other college towns in Maine.
Mhm.
That's a draw. That makes students more likely to go there. That makes guests more likely to want to come and stay. Like that's it's not just purely generous, right? It is a strategic investment,
Yeah,
right, in improving everything, and everyone benefits from it.
very intentional.
Terrific. Let's get into your transition out of Wall Street and into philanthropy.
Sure.
What caused that?
Unfortunately, one of my clients passed away. Her name was Virginia Toulmin. And just a quick background on Virginia, she graduated Washington University in St. Louis as a nursing major. After college, she worked with young moms and their babies, as well as returning veterans from the war. And after a couple of years, she decided she wanted to do something a little bit more, she would say, risky. So she became a nurse on the long haul railroads. And if you recall, the businessmen would primarily travel by train.
Sure.
So the route that which she was hired for, originated in St. Louis, went through Dayton, Ohio, and ended up in Washington, D.C. And after a number of trips, she met this man that was frequently on her route. His name was Harry Toulmin. And Harry Toulmin was the patent attorney to the Wright brothers. Well, they got to know each other over a few years and they got married. And Harry was also buying shares of a tiny pharmaceutical company in Seymour, Indiana, the name of which was Central Pharmaceuticals. And he told Virginia after they were married only a short time, I'm going to put you on this board because you speak their language. It will be the goose that laid the golden egg for you. Unfortunately, Harry died only 7 years after their marriage. So in 1965, Virginia started as president and CEO of Central Pharmaceuticals, which was in bankruptcy. In 1995, she sold Central Pharmaceuticals for over $180 million to a German conglomerate.
Not bad.
So there was
She was president for 30 years then?
yeah,
Wow.
brilliant woman, just brilliant. And in 1995, when she became liquid, her estate planner was working with her and interviewing money managers. It just so happened that her estate planner was one of my mentors and a very close friend. And he suggested that Virginia work with me. So I began working with Virginia in 1995 with KeyBank, where she had a long-standing relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And she traveled around the world. We traveled around the world together. And I never fully understood until she asked what those 15 years together really meant. And what it meant for her was teaching me what she felt was the most important part of philanthropy: how to evaluate people, how to work with people. So we went to hundreds and hundreds of meetings. She also was one who liked to challenge me. I was a young man, I was in my early 30s. And she wanted to be able to trust me because she felt that trust was one of the most important characteristics and core values one must exhibit for you to have a real good working relationship. So she would test me. She would tell me, I want you to call me at 7 a.m. every morning. And I would. And if I didn't, she would want to know why. If I called and she wasn't there, she would call me later and tell me, I'm sorry that I wasn't there. Thank you for leaving me that message. So we became very, very close. She became my mentor, if you will. When my son died, she helped me through a very traumatic period in my life. So she no longer was just a client. She was a true friend. Before she died, only a few weeks before she died in 2010, she sat me down and she told me how her estate plan was going to work. Now, I knew some of it over the years, but then I got to see the full aspect of it. And the first thing we did was she drew a picture and she said, Bill, roughly $80 million is going to Georgetown University Medical Center. Now that money was primarily the Central Pharmaceutical stock prior to its sale that her husband put into a trust in honor of his grandfather, who was the first graduate of the medical center. So that money lived in a separate trust that was managed separately that was going to Georgetown, specifically for medical research. She left $28 million to the Dayton Foundation. She felt that Dayton was in need of a donor advised fund through trustees that she named to give back to Dayton, where she lived most of her life. And then the remainder of her money, roughly at $140 million, would go to a charitable remainder trust in her name to be managed as if it was a foundation. Now, the trick was she named only 3 trustees. One was her lawyer, one was me, and the last was her private banker at KeyBank. But again, she was so smart that she gave the power to appoint successor trustees to one person, her lawyer. So if one of the other 2 trustees resigned, he had the right and power to appoint other trustees. In addition, she said, KeyBank will be my corporate trustee only as long as her private banker was employed at Key, because she believed in relationships. She saw how Key had been merged many different times with other banks, and she saw the rotation of the trust officers. And she felt that the best use of her money was with 3 people that knew her very well. So that's how we set out. The 3 of us in 2010 when she passed, 80 going to Georgetown, 26 or so going to Dayton, and 140 to her private foundation with no direction. And the reason why she wanted to be left with no direction was because she felt that we knew her very well and that we would establish the foundation so it was flexible enough to move in the direction where money would be most beneficially needed or beneficially used, rather than being locked in to the same organizations in perpetuity. So that was the structure. And again, I traveled all over with her, and it was a really wonderful relationship.
Thank you for that. It's a cool thing to happen to you. You might still be on Wall Street, I guess, if it hadn't, right?
I think so. And I still do have an asset management business,
Okay.
and I still do manage money, and I still do manage her money. I still manage her money as well.
And this is not my area, and it is yours. But everything you just described there is nothing's really non-standard there when it comes to estate planning, right?
Right.
For someone with that level of wealth, there will be a higher education institution, probably where a family member went, that get, like, for instance, Colby gets this kind of benefit as well, right? That's where a large amount goes, and then a community foundation from where they're from, and then there's some left over, and that can go to causes that matter to the person that set it up.
Right.
And I think for a lot of grant seekers go into grant seeking without understanding any of that. They see a pile of money and an application deadline, and there is in fact a lot of history and thought that's gone into setting that up, and intentionality. And so I think it's really helpful for people to be able to hear that story. So thank you again for sharing it. One of the things that's been very interesting to me when it's in family foundations, since I was briefly involved with my grandmother's philanthropy while she was still around, and I became a grant seeker myself, which I suppose I still am. And I think when I first got into it, family foundation meant family members involved in the decision making, and there still are a lot of family foundations where that's what's happening. But I recently saw a stat from Exponent Philanthropy, friends of the podcast, that currently about 60% of the CEOs of family foundations are not related to the family whose name is on the foundation. And you're one of those CEOs. So in fact, it is now more, it's not an exception, it is the norm that someone who's not related is running the foundation. What do you think about, and that is a growing trend. I imagine you're encouraging, you got a job out of it, but what are your general thoughts on that sort of distancing the family from the decision making?
So I do want to explain why there's not a family member. Mrs. Toulmin had no children. Mrs. Toulmin.
Do you think there would be, if she had children, they would be involved?
I can't answer that because I couldn't tell you how the children would have turned out. She was very, very, very explicit on what she wanted. And her brother passed away, her only sibling, 1 year to the day before her. He was to be named the head of the foundation if he outlived her. But unfortunately, he did not.
Hmm.
So there were no children in her marriage, and she was not very close to her cousins or cousins' children. Close, but not in the same way.
Cousins are different, yes.
So that's why ours is the way it is right now.
So beyond Toulmin, though, what do you think of the trend of this trend in philanthropy?
Yeah.
There are foundations where the children are alive and around, but they're not running. They're less and less. They running the foundations, and more. And this is something we talked about in our most recent episode. We interviewed Judd Fisher from Ball Brothers, and he is a family member. But they have a decent sized staff, professional staff, people who've been educated in the art of philanthropy. And I'm a big fan of having professionals on that side of the giving. And I wonder what you think of that. I mean, as a professional who's in the position.
Yeah, by the way, that was a great interview.
Oh, thank you.
I really enjoyed that interview.
I do my best.
It was great. There's most of the foundations, though, will have a family member on the board if there is a board. And there is where, a lot of the decisions, strategic decisions are made. So there's still going to be some input from the family and the tradition of the family at the board level. There's a foundation in Sarasota called the Barancic Foundation, Charles and Marjorie Barancic, that when they passed away tragically, they had the head of their donor advised fund come over and run the private foundation. And a few of the board members are family members. And then the staff are non-family members. So I actually think it's a good thing. It's an example of getting a further reach into society to maybe where the founders had a limited scope, and there's lots of needs out there that can be brought to the table then.
Mm-hmm. And I do think, family members are the best situated to talk about the legacy of the family and the values of the family that set things up in the first place, right?
Agreed.
And so I like the idea. I'm not opposed to the family being involved, but I'm also really encouraged by the idea that we're bringing in professionals to run these things, especially when we're talking about a pretty sizable operation. It's over $100 million in the endowment and millions of dollars going out in grants every year. That's a very serious operation. And I do think, on the business side of things, there are many family-run businesses in this country, and they don't necessarily get the same number of scrutiny when the next generation takes over the family business.
Agreed.
So you mentioned that it was set up with 3 trustees, and as I understand, there are still 3 trustees, all of whom are compensated. Do I understand correctly that there is no staff?
Correct.
So you are sort of in a joint trustee staff role.
Correct.
How does that work in practice? What is the day to day of being the CEO of a $100+ million operation?
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but we have clear pillars that we've defined for our giving strategy. Those pillars were designed after a 2-year search by an independent consultant, speaking to Virginia's friends, relatives, business associates, organizations she funded, to really drive deep into what she was all about. Because 3 of us had different relationships with her. So we knew her in many different ways. But she was very private about her philanthropic work. She didn't share much that way. She just wanted to instill how to do it. So we spent over 2 years trying to figure that out. And we were able to do so and expand upon it. But then we decided we were going to be by invitation only, because we would be inundated. And we wanted to make sure that we knew the people. Virginia's core belief is to know the people in the organization, especially those running the organization. So if it's not a referral from a friend, a fellow organization that we fund, we just will not look at it, unfortunately. And, we feel like we can do a lot with who we know and how we know them and the work that they're doing and the trust that we have in them to bring us good organizations and good people, that the by invitation only makes sense. We also have an independent consultant who works with us that helps us evaluate the grants. Because again, you can fall in love pretty quickly with something, and you're the quote unquote sponsor trustee of that organization, and you want to have some oversight. So we have someone who works with us. His name is Richard Mittenthal at TCC Group, to make sure that the grants are staying in line with our intent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's set up like you would if you were running money. It's looking at the risk factors of everything, and then associating some sort of upside to it through our funding.
This is we're in the meat of the interview now. This is all very good stuff. I'm swirling with thoughts about some of the stuff you just said. But I want to, one of the most common questions I get from the proposal authors that we review, and one of the most common pieces of feedback that we give. So last round we did some analysis into the feedback that our evaluator. We did almost 900 reviews of grant proposals. And this is mostly from grants professionals who really know what they're doing when it comes to seeking grants. And the most common area of focus for that feedback was around relationships, was you applied cold to this foundation, and that's very unlikely to be successful. Like I said earlier, lots of times grant seekers don't really consider the history and values when they look at a foundation. They just sort of find alignment, see a pile of money, try to figure out when the application deadline is, and send their grant off. And right now in 2026, there are more nonprofits than there have ever been. It is easier to write and submit a grant proposal than it ever was. When I first got into grant seeking, we had to print out our grant proposals and mail them to the foundation. And now it is much easier to write them up and to send them in. And there's a much larger pool of folks who are competing for these grants.
Yes.
What you've said to me, inundated, is exactly right. It's really important for grant seekers to understand that once you go out there into the world, start giving away funding, like a lot of, and it's not just the people who are asking for money. These are all great causes, right? Like all these nonprofits are doing great work, and if you were to fund them, you would be funding great work. And this is just a difficult challenge. But one of the most common questions we get when we're actually talking to the grant seekers is about invitation-only foundations and how to get that invite. Right, I was looking over your website. There's literally no way. Unless I missed it. Perhaps it's very hidden. Right, there's no way to contact the foundation. If someone's done that, and I think this is true. These foundation folks, they do their research. There's lots of research tools around there. They can find the foundations that they believe they are aligned with. So for the folks, not just all, like obviously everybody would love a grant from the Toulmin Foundation. I would love one. Every foundation person I've ever talked to would love a grant. Grants are terrific to receive, right? But assuming for those folks who see real alignment, right, who share stuff in common with the current list of grantees, and really think they're a fit and they're in the communities that you fund, right? What is the appropriate approach for those folks, understanding that you are inundated with requests?
Yeah, I would say you have to find a common person. Because that common person is going to be the key to the conversations that we would have to really learn about the leadership. Because leadership to us is really very important. We love to say leadership plus mission alignment is a winner. Leadership without mission alignment, we will not do. And poor leadership with mission alignment, we will not do. So it has to be a perfect alignment. And we believe that it's the core values of that person, that leadership, that we rely quite a lot on, because they're the ones we're going to get the truth from. We don't mind grants that don't work, right? It's the idea that we can work to make them better during the grant cycle, then wait till the end to be reported on that it didn't work. So we like those interactions and we like those conversations. We're very active philanthropists. We are seen at the organizations. We're getting dirty at the camps in the summer with the kids and the adults, and we're working hard at making sure that we understand who's benefiting. And that makes us feel like our philanthropy is really impactful. So to answer your question, you have to find a common person. There has to be a common person for us to align with.
And so, for large organizations have some staff. Hopefully, those folks are out there in the world and networking and proving themselves to be useful actors. And for those organizations and smaller ones, hopefully there's a board of directors that's doing the same. And it is true, and it can be very discouraging to find a foundation that you're a good fit in and see, well, they don't accept requests. But another piece of data I've seen from a few different sources recently is that invitation-only foundations are funding like 30% on average new grantees each year. And look, I scanned some of your 990s. There are new organizations that are coming up. So it's hard. It's not just finding out the application deadline and submitting a proposal. There is some other relationship building, human to human work. It's humanitarian work after all. So right there we are. It's not just going to be that the AI matches you up with the foundation and the open requests, right? It's still going to need to be people involved with that. And that makes sense. If you're going to give a large grant, I think you're going to want to know the person. If we're talking about trust-based philanthropy, right? Hard to trust someone you've never met.
Right. And we're honest with our grantees, and we like to roll off for a while.
Mm-hmm.
We like to let them know, look, next year, the year after, we'll be taking some time off. We'll scale you down, but it's time for us to move to another organization. And we feel like we've done some good work here with you. And, we want to see it continue because we think it's the only way to be able to bring on new organizations. So we're very upfront and honest with our grantees, which is why we do not do capital. We will not build buildings. We don't invest in endowment.
Mm-hmm.
We invest in program. And that's really important. It's what she taught me. The program piece is really vital to what we do. So when you have a new launch or you have an add-on program and you can see that it's working, or the best of both worlds is someone comes in and decides they want to take over the funding of that program, and we can either move to another program there, or we can say, thank you, it's been great, you're off to the races. So it's the real personal relationship we have with the organizations.
That is another piece of data I saw recently. It was like 75% of grant seekers, and this is true for me as well, report being ghosted by a funder, within the last few years, where they were like that you received a grant from them and it's not just that you're not invited back. They stop talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's large. Those are awkward conversations to have, and so they just sort of avoid them. So I'm glad to hear that you raised that and have that conversation, because it is, it must happen. The resources are limited, even at a place like the Toulmin Foundation. There are many great causes, right, those. I think part of trust is communication, and so I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, Dave. If you know who's granting the money to you, if they're just writing a check, then you should expect that they're going to ghost you at some point. Yes. But if you see the grant, if you see the person who's granting the funds in the dirt with you, doing the work, enjoying, telling you stories about their experience, the chances of that happening get less and less.
Bring your funders into the dirt.
If they want to be. Not everybody wants to be, and that's perfectly fine. Just know who they are, right? Yeah. And accept that they may just ghost you, or as you said, they may just not want to communicate with you, but that's the way they operate. Mm-hmm. So go in knowing that, and then you can manage your expectations and you can manage your grant book appropriately.
So you've mentioned trust-based philanthropy a few times, mm-hmm. And at the moment, it is now the predominant practice in philanthropy. According, like the 6 in 10 foundations report doing some form of trust-based philanthropy. One of the things I've noted, and so there's an organization out there called the Trust-Based Philanthropy Project, and they have like a list of I was looking over there, like the list of pillars that make it up, and I was just like, oh, these are just like I would just call these best practices in philanthropy. Like it's just how to be a good, it's just how to be a good foundation. And I think probably, if I'm getting my dates right, trust-based philanthropy wouldn't have been a term of art when Virginia was around.
Right.
But trust certainly has been around for a long time. And so, understanding that this is now not really a fringe practice, more of a mainstream practice. Right? What specific things are you bringing to work? You mentioned pillars and those sorts of things, but how are you continuing your focus on trust-based philanthropy? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, just to go back to trust-based philanthropy, you're right. She would not have understood that. But what she did believe in is, don't tell me how much I should trust you. Show me how much I should trust you. Same concept, but in Virginia's words, a little bit different, but still really impactful. So for us, we want to hear the wins and we want to hear the losses. We want to hear those things that we can improve on. We want to hear about what other people are funding within your organization. We want to hear about the struggles, right? Many funders don't want to hear that you're having a rough time raising money. What's happening in Israel right now in a few of our camps that we're funding, they're hurting because they're not getting the dollars that they need and they're running big deficits right now.
Mm-hmm.
And because of our relationship with them and the trust we have with them, we're willing to step up and we're willing to help them in these periods because the kids should not suffer. Those kids that have cancer should not suffer missing camp with their siblings and friends. We need to step up in times like this. So it's the open dialogue that we encourage all of our leadership that we grant to have with us. Tell us what's happening. Tell us what may not be working, or tell us some of the problems you're having. And we do a lot of that. So we're not the one who's judging, we're the partner with you.
That's very good. I like that. There are, I think, a lot of cursory critics of philanthropy who are also proponents of trust-based philanthropy, and what they think it means is, right, just give us the grant, don't talk to us. They talk about, there's a new acronym that I kind of like, my God. I don't know if you know that.
No.
Multi-year general operating dollars.
Okay. Oh, I like that.
So you just commit to giving the same amount for 10 years. Don't require reports. Don't require site visits. Right. That's what they think this means to them. Well, unfortunately, with that, if every foundation and increase your payout rates, go up from
Right.
5%, which the average return for foundations is closer to 10% than 5%, and certainly they could, right, especially in times of polycrisis, increase that giving amount, or even there could be more spend down foundations as well. But I think it is sort of, it's not deeply thoughtful criticism to say just give more and ask less and ask fewer questions. Because if every foundation were to do that, were to commit to my God for the next 10 years, right, then they won't be able to fund new organizations. Right, they won't be able to be responsive. They won't be able to step up. Like one of the reasons why you file reports with your funders is so they can understand what's going on there and perhaps give more next year, understand the intent of their grants, and become better givers. So I like the idea that it is, I think this is, grant seekers may look at reports as tedious, and sometimes they can be. I remember I had a funder that we had to apply every year, and we also had to send a report every year. And they were both due on the application, the proposal and the report from last year were both due on the same date each year, which I think is a very silly thing. It could have all been one document that everybody reads. But do you require, like, what kind of reporting and proposal requirements do you have for your?
Yeah. So the first thing is, our maximum length grant is 2 years.
Okay.
And so we actually we ask for an annual update, but we ask for it so that it's within 3 months prior to the anniversary of them potentially asking for another grant. If we haven't spoken to that organization within those 9 months, then there's an issue. And that's how active we are.
Yep.
Because what they write on paper is one thing, but what they tell you and what you see is a totally different thing. So we believe in the update reports. I think it's important. We have an application process, which we believe is important, but we find most important is the conversations we're having and the site visits that we have that will tell us the true story of what's about to come in those reports.
So trust-based philanthropy, definitely an increasing. We're using that phrase often, and I think probably like the 2026 has really exploded. There was a pretty big court case Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation, which I think is in Bentonville, Arkansas, which we mentioned earlier.
I didn't know that.
And it's an interesting case. I don't actually think it has too much to do. I think it's just a family squabble, and someone used trust-based philanthropy as a as an excuse to, right, because it's a trend and trends are targets sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But the argument that the plaintiffs or the defendants, I forget which, made was that it undermines donor intent. And you've mentioned donor intent a few times. Do you feel that trusting your grantees undermines your intention?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Simple answer. Yeah, I don't think I agree with you there.
No,
But what do you think of people who say that it does?
I don't comment on other people's beliefs. I just comment on mine. Virginia always taught me.
But for you, it has not got you. You seem to be a very intentional philanthropist who trusts their grantees and practices trust-based philanthropy, and it doesn't seem to be getting in the way of that.
No. Yeah, I mean, Virginia always said trust and verify. So that's what we do.
Yep.
Right. And we say it going in. And because we have a relationship, or we have a person who has a relationship, and that person who is introducing us knows the way we operate, we feel like it's a given when we walk in the door, we're going to have lots of conversations because we really want to be active for you. We want to be able to be there for you. You had mentioned, foundations are roughly making 10% a year, but giving out 5, they should be able to give away more. I would say that there's those foundations like ours, when the market was down a few years ago in the 20s, and there was the mental health crisis of all the nursing staff, we stepped into it. We gave away more because we believed that it was time. It's not that the market needs to go up, you give away more money. It's the need that signifies what you do and when you do it. And we stepped up in a big way to help organizations with the mental health aspect of those nurses, in particular nurses, because that's what Virginia was during COVID and the crisis that we were seeing.
Yes.
So, it's very personal with us because I knew her, and I'm now the last person that knew her on our board. And everything we do, we always ask ourselves or each other, what would Virginia think? What would she say to this? And that's really important for us when we have that conversation with all of our grants. And how do we make sure that it aligns with what Virginia would have wanted? Because she left us no direction, but the direction to make sure that we follow in what she believed in.
One of my philanthropic role models, my grandmother, one of the things I remember her saying is, don't touch the principle. And as a wealth manager, I imagine we've
heard that
before. But I do think that is a lot of when you're, so when you are, if your returns are 10% and you're giving away 5%, that's not just solely greed. One, that no one can benefit personally from those gains. And that sort of ensures that you'll be able to fund in perpetuity. Unfortunately, some of the problems that you're facing are going to be around 50, 100 years from now. And you want to make, and hopefully you want to be able to, I think spending down is a wonderful choice that foundations make and allows them to have a lot of impact very quickly. But, Atlantic Philanthropies isn't with us anymore to help us with the crises we have today because they successfully spent down years ago. So do you have, and this wasn't on my list of questions, I apologize.
That's okay.
Since you're in wealth management, I imagine you're qualified to answer. How do you think about perpetuity and like the length of the giving that the foundation will do?
All the time. So, the markets have been good, right, since 2010 when she passed. So we started with 140 million. We've surpassed $100 million of grants, and we're at 150 million today, because I believe that the fiscal part of it, the fiscal management of those foundation assets, has been quite good.
Yep.
And I think that we're not trying to hit home runs. So we're not invested in any kind of locked up fund where you can't get your money, because what good is that money if it gets locked up for the organizations you're helping? So we are very, very strict in how we look at these funds. And again, we don't have an office, so we have very little overhead. Yes, the trustees are paid because it is a trust, so we're trustees. So yes,
it sounds like you're doing work, and work should be.
We're doing work. We're doing work. And the other 2 trustees, the same. They have, one has a full-time job, and he works full-time at this as well, because this is really what he loves. The other trustee is a retired trust and estate attorney who, he actually manages our Women in the Arts program, and he's at every evening he's somewhere at an event. He wants to get to meet the people.
That
And know
sounds
the
fun.
people. It's really fun. It's really fun. So yes, the fiscal management is super important to me. I want this to go on beyond my lifetime. I want Virginia Toulmin's name to be recognized as one of the greatest philanthropists in American history because of the way she left her money. And that was without intention, without direction, with the full faith and trust that we would do what was right.
And it sounds like, if I get the numbers correct here, you have been able to grow the endowment and give away $100 million.
Yes.
That's, yeah, good work. That's one of the reasons why you get a wealth manager involved in these things, right?
Well, I think so. But again, it's also discipline, right? It's what she taught me. You know, she just taught me so many things, and discipline was a big part of it. And when the stock market's running, it's very tempting to want to throw all your money where all the money's being made. But it's not a discipline that would make sense for the foundation long term.
So when you were talking about the trustees, I heard he a lot in there.
Yeah.
One of the focuses of the foundation is women and girls. It's named after a woman. I think I understand correctly. The board's currently all men.
Correct.
Right. So, and it sounds like one of the trustees is going to events. If it's anything like, most of the nonprofits I've worked at have been mostly women working there. It's a big part of the sector. How do you deal with the gender dynamics of that as a foundation focused on women and girls with a woman founder when you are all men?
Because most of the organizations we fund are women run.
Yeah.
So
you just listen to the talk, and
yeah,
you have access to them. And
oh yeah, yeah. We have probably the largest private foundation working with women in the arts in the country right now.
it might be true, yeah.
And that's very intentional. And Alexander Sanger, who actually manages that program for us, as I say, is literally out every night in New York, at plays, at orchestras, at ballets, and has come up with some ingenious programs. Women choreographers are very few. So we fund a program with School of American Ballet in New York for young girls in their early teens and older teens to become choreographers or follow a passion of being a choreographer. That's really unheard of. And yet we have a huge presence in that area with playwrights, with directors, with orchestras. So yes, we are three gentlemen, but we are really penetrating and listening to what women are telling us in the pillars that we invest.
It's inspiring, and also it sounds to me not, and this is unlike trust-based philanthropy or some of the other things we talked about. It is funding women and women-led things actually is somewhat fringe in philanthropy, unfortunately. But it sounds to me like the solution is not all that complicated. Even a group of three dudes can find a way to have funding women be a big part of it and have impact that way.
Yeah, if you can prove that you care. Like if we can prove that we care about, the disproportionate share of women in performing arts, if we can show that we care, it can be done, and it is being done.
I think this is probably true for other areas of underfunded. So it's also true that Black founders get a very small percentage of philanthropy, and I think a lot of foundation trustees are white folks. And it sounds to me like that the solution there probably equally uncomplicated, right? Just make the decision to be intentional about it, and listen to the folks who are doing the work.
Yeah, and show that you know what you're doing.
Yep.
Right. Trust and verify.
Terrific. So you have mentioned you are currently the executive director of MyFace?
Correct.
So you do an awful lot, Bill.
I do.
And this is terrific. So this is a nonprofit that supports people with craniofacial differences. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So tell me more about that. What does MyFace do?
Sure. So MyFace supports the psychosocial aspects or programmatic aspects for individuals with facial differences. So it could be a young child that was born with a cleft or a cleft lip and palate, which requires surgeries throughout their childhood to usually the age of 21, where they'll repair the cleft, they'll repair the lip, They'll have to go in throughout their journey for other modifications, some more drastic, born without ears, some born with a facial paralysis. Some, unfortunately, may have experienced a tragic event where their face now has a difference.
Mhm.
And these individuals are in hiding most of the time, especially when they're young. They're bullied, they're made fun of in school. Like, we're all bullied in high school or middle school. We're all made fun of in one area where we make fun of someone, and it gets pretty hard to get through that. But imagine if you have a facial difference. And this is what we're trying to do at MyFace. We're 75 years old. We work with different hospitals around the country, and we're trying to bring out those in hiding and give them a community. Give them people that look like themselves, give them experiences like everyone else, be part of society.
So you say it's 75 years old?
It is.
There's no way that it was originally called My Face. Is that?
No, it was called the National Foundation for Facial Reconstruction.
Yeah.
And it was founded by a number of doctors at NYU in New York to assist wartime soldiers who had facial differences as a result of the war. And from there, they started working with young children born with facial differences. And now they have worked with a number of individuals that had pretty dramatic face impairments with facial transplants. So it's the gamut right now of the work being done by not just NYU, but other hospitals around the country. And we're there to support those families through their journey.
So it sounds like wonderful work.
Thank you.
You are very interesting. You're on both sides of it. I always like having guests who have spent some time as grant seeker and as grant maker. And in this case, you work at the place that does some of the funding of MyFace. MyFace has received grants from Toulmin Foundation.
Correct.
It's technically a conflict of interest.
Correct.
Conflicts are quite common in this field. I have some in my work and on some of the boards I serve on. So talk to me about what is the process for negotiating that conflict?
Sure. Can I just go back and tell you how I got involved?
Oh, please. Yes, please. How did you?
So I was introduced when Virginia passed, again, going back to people we respect, went to my mentor in the investment business and said, John, where do you give your money? And he explained to me about MyFace, and he brought me for a visit, and I fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the kids, the parents, the struggles, primarily the siblings were having, feeling isolated and neglected because their sibling was spending so much time with their parents. So I became a donor. No conflict there. Just became a donor. Again, trust-based philanthropy, going in, making sure that things were working right. And after a while, the members
as an individual, you gave
as an individual, the Toulmin Foundation.
Were you at the foundation at this point?
Yeah, 2012 was my first gift. The foundation was formed in 2010.
Okay.
So in 2012, I made a gift to MyFace, then National Foundation for Facial Reconstruction, and got busy doing the work that we do at Toulmin, and that's getting to know the organization, visiting with the people that were benefiting from their work and the doctors. Around 2013, 14, the board of MyFace asked me if I'd be interested in sitting on the board, which we do. Not something that we don't do. We absolutely sit on boards. And I got to know the organization better and rose to become board chair and worked through a strategic plan. And then our executive director retired. And the board asked me if I'd be willing to take on the role of interim executive director. And I agreed. I stepped down as board chair. Again, both trustees had to agree to it, which they did. And we continue to fund. But any grant proposals sent to us, I had to recuse myself. And the consultant and the two trustees spent quite a lot of time talking about the grant. Our consultant spent time independent of our meeting talking to the organization. So we had an independent view. Even though I was on it, I think I had a deeper view of what was going on, which I share. Again, I am fiercely loyal to Virginia. So if I feel that something's not right, I'm leaving. I'm not sticking around on that board. And then after 1 year of interim, they asked me to stay. And so I'm now the full-time executive director running this organization. And I have to tell you, Dave, it is the hardest job I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
By far.
I
by
think there's
far.
lots of executive directors listening right now who are like, yes, it is very hard. I think being an executive director of a nonprofit is one of the hardest, most undersung jobs in this country, and largely misunderstood, I think.
You live it every day. I mean, there's not a moment you're not thinking about it, you know? And so you are sitting there wondering, what's the next best thing I can do to help the organization? But wait, I need funding for that. I can't do it unless I get funding. How do I get funding if I can't demonstrate? It is constant ping pong in my mind. And the one thing that I did when I joined and became executive director is I looked at our staff and I said, we have one person with a facial difference on our staff, and yet we profess to want to make a difference in this community. So I immediately upped the ante, and we have 5 people now that we have working for us with a difference, because they know what I don't know. And it's really important to be able to look in the mirror and say, you don't know, you need to get help to get that answer.
Absolutely. So you talked earlier about, when we were talking about how to approach invitation-only foundations, you talked about having people in common. It sounds like that's how my face was able to get, was they had some people in common, you and perhaps some other people. And it sounds like that's the standard way to negotiate a conflict. Like I said, they are pretty common.
Yeah.
Hopefully, folks who are on the boards of foundations are also in the dirt, as you say, involved in nonprofits. And so, right. And I think we can't possibly have people in common if we look at conflicts like barriers, right? So the fact that you found a way to negotiate that and work that through is terrific. And it sounds like great work being done on both sides.
One other thing, Dave, we have our lawyer with us at every meeting.
That
So
sounds fun. I would
there's
love to have a lawyer with me all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we need it. You know, we're visible, and you know, it's a woman. So there you go.
Okay, great. Yes.
And she's terrific, and she's really been helpful in the structuring of the grants, in our governance, which is really important to me. And so, yes, we follow strict rules. Even on the investment side, I still manage the money. We have independent consultants. They're evaluating my work. They're evaluating the work and the management selection of what I do, independent of me.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to keep the conflicts manageable. Mm-hmm. And by making them manageable means you have to follow the rules, and we follow them strictly.
I know, and it's important to mention that you do need to follow the rules with the proper disclosure, because there is something like in order for the foundation to do its work and for MyFace to do its work, have to be able to maintain their 501c3 statuses, and that the IRS will and has pulled statuses over undisclosed conflicts like that. So
yeah,
that is
even on the investment side, right? On my farm ADV,
yes.
I have to disclose, and so there's a great risk to me not disclosing. Right. And it becoming uncovered. And that's where it becomes very critical that you do what you're told to do by the regulators.
So it sounds to me like for the majority of the time you've been involved with the foundation, that you've also been involved with at least one nonprofit, MyFace, probably others, and thinking about grant seeking. So it sounds to me like for the majority of your time in philanthropy, you've been on both sides of the process. I know some people who are only grant makers and some people who are only grant seekers, and I think that generally limits their ability to do either thing. Do you think would you agree with that? Do you think it's been a strength to be able to be on both sides of this?
I do. And I think probably the most important aspect that I could bring to people is the importance of getting to know the people you're asking the money to receive from. You know, too often we are just struck by, I found this organization, let me just submit. Well, I don't believe in that, right? I believe that you have to get to know the people that you're asking money. Even if they don't want to get to know you, then don't have too high expectations that you're going to get the money. And, you know, it becomes, you know, it becomes like a risk metrics. I tell the people that work for me at MyFace all the time, when you're out there looking for funding, you have to evaluate from a 1 to 5 scale what you think the probability is without a relationship. And then you need to understand the relationship is going to help secure it, how long it's going to take. So there's all these things that go in my head all the time in trying to teach people about both sides of the coin, which I play so often.
Very good. It's a key element to the work we do at Unfunded List. Most of our evaluators, I think, are primarily grant seekers. But when they're volunteering with us, they get to step into the role of reading someone else's proposal and thinking about it that way. And I think a lot of people have read their first proposal with us And I've seen personally that exposing them to that perspective will make that, and they tell me this too, will make them better grant seekers. And I think
It's great.
that clearly you have a really good handle on the relationship aspect to funding because you've been in both sides and had to manage relationships from both sides.
I think I do. And I think I have a lot to say and offer people who are just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and the folks listening to the podcast today as well. Hopefully, they're listening carefully, taking notes, because I think there's a lot of good stuff that we've covered here. I want to take
Thank
a
you.
step up, right? I want to sort of do a 10,000-foot view at philanthropy writ large. What do you think are the major challenges facing nonprofits today? It's an easy question, right? Simple.
Because I'm trying to think of it as it relates to some of the organizations we work with. I think it's the misnomer that boards are as willing as they used to be to help build the organization.
Hmm.
I think many board members are older or getting older,
Mm-hmm.
and their, quote unquote, Rolodex becomes more limited as time goes on. Those that are working don't have as much time
Mm-hmm.
as they might have when they were younger. And I think it's the composition of the boards that really need focus these days. And those organizations that we fund that are vibrant have a very active board, but they also have a very active nomination process so they can circle around new board members well before one steps off. So it's the whole cultivation of new board members, I think, is super important and something that we're just not focusing enough on.
Hmm. I agree. I think it's certainly true. All things being equal, the nonprofits that are thriving are the ones with the most active and engaged and diverse boards. People with from it's not like I think you can have a couple old heads, retired folks working their Rolodex.
It's so true.
uh, and then you can also have younger folks who are still working and have some professional acumen to bring to the table. I certainly think the board, like when it comes to Colby, David Green's a tremendous fundraiser, but he's also got a great, well-connected board of different folks, mostly Colby alums, who really understand and appreciate the organization and the field, and that's why they're able to. And he's also got a great staff and all of that, and that's why they're successful. A lot
We
of
talk
nonprofits,
about,
though, it's just one executive director and a
yeah,
small, unengaged board, and it's really shouldn't be any kind of surprise that they are struggling.
yeah. You think about even the infrastructure, like you talked about the people working for Mr. Green. He has great people working for him. People that are paid in the nonprofit are not paid as if they work on Wall Street. And these people are giving much of their life and their time and their fortune to go work for a cause. You
Yep.
can only do that for so long before the cost of living catches up with you and you just cannot afford those things. And I think it's a big problem within the sector as well, is, the huge dichotomy between those that are, paid well and those that are doing, work, the real work of these nonprofits. And I can tell you that I think that something has to give, because it's an area that's so needed, that many nonprofits are understaffed because their budgets won't support it. They
Mm-hmm.
can't support it because they can't get the donations to
It
support
just
it.
can't, yeah.
And it becomes a really difficult environment to sustain really good people.
Yep. I mean, that's what I see pretty much every day as the major challenge. We talk about the burnout problem, which I think is actually somewhat of it. Is that the problem is simpler than that. It is that the people who work in nonprofits aren't paid enough. The folks at Colby are doing fine,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. It's a great place to work if you're considering it. But like for you're more service oriented.
Yeah.
Smaller nonprofits are losing talented staff, or they're not even able to find them in the first place because the salaries just aren't there, and they're not. And I don't necessarily know how to solve this problem, but I do see that as a significant one. And I think that not making that any better has been that over the last year, perhaps a little longer now. Yeah, I guess it was over a year ago that we started cutting large amounts of federal funding
Oh,
to nonprofits. And there's
yep.
also policy like SNAP cuts aren't really necessarily directly to nonprofits, but that raises the demand on their
Need.
services. And so the 1-2 punch of cutting their federal grants and increasing the demand has been something we here at Unfunded, we're getting a lot of folks who lost their federal funding and are trying to pivot to private philanthropy, which is a much different animal, funds for much different reasons.
Think about the cost of living.
Political about it. But what are you seeing in your own grantee community?
Yeah.
On that front.
Yeah. So we do a lot of giving in Sarasota, Florida, where Virginia spent the last 15 years of her life. And not 20 miles outside Sarasota proper are some very, very poor towns. These are farming towns. And these are farmers that maybe ice coming in and petrified, maybe that it's just not needed, that farming any longer. I mean, these are right outside one of the wealthiest cities in the country, let alone trying to get workers to come into the city. They can't afford it. They can't find housing in the city. So many of these organizations that are working in the social services area can't find the people because they can't pay the people to even afford a home. And I see it all over. In Palm Beach, we do work, New York City. It's a real problem. And it goes back to what we were talking about. It's the salaries that these individuals are being paid. They just can't support a lifestyle. They can't support their mortgage along with groceries and education and things that are so badly needed.
Mm-hmm. So you have grantees at Toulmin who have lost federal funding?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Are you like? I mean, obviously you're not really in a position to replace the federal government. What are you stepping up your grants to those folks? Are you trying at least in part to fill those gaps, or?
We are, but we're trying to find solutions beyond just the funding.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to find things like we're going to be funding a mobile health unit. We can't build a hospital.
Right.
But we maybe can provide some basic necessities for those that need to have their annual checkups. Maybe, certain tests that women need to have, it can be done through this mobile health unit. So we're doing things along those lines, but it's a big problem. It's a big problem.
We were talking about increasing payout rates earlier, and I forget the exact number, but currently the average is like 5 or 6%, which is close to the minimum payout rate, unfortunately. In order to replace the lost federal funding, that we would need to increase that average payout to well over 200%, which is mathematically impossible. You can't give you can't give over 200% of your amount. So finding creative ways to do that, I think, is a big part of the work of not just grant seekers, but grant makers as well right now.
And, the Toulmin Foundation, Mrs. Toulmin really made her money in medical research, right, through Central Pharmaceuticals. So we have a medical research program, and those researchers are getting their funding cut dramatically. And now we have to look at these programs and we have to figure out how much can we, but what is the end game for it? We hope that it works. Of course, research is a tricky business, but now if there's less funding, is it a longer time horizon that we're looking at than before? And these are the things that we're toying with all the time at the foundation.
So another thing that I imagine has come up, and this has been sort of, I mentioned the 1-2 punch earlier, and it's sort of more of a combination, sort of a 1, 2, 3. So grant seekers have lost their federal funding and are pivoting to private philanthropy. At the same time that the demand has skyrocketed, so there are now more nonprofits. There are literally more nonprofits today than there have ever been. And then there's also AI, which has made it easier to research funders and put proposals together. I applaud us both for getting over an hour into an interview without talking about AI once. AI is recording us right now, but we'll take a little bit of time now. I'd be interested to know how AI has changed your work over the last few years.
Well, from the Toulmin side, it allows us to read 990s a little bit quicker. It allows us to kind of dig a little bit deeper in those things. But the truth is, it hasn't changed all that much for us because we are just so focused on the relationship aspect of this that AI gives us a little bit of a tool, but it doesn't really give us the answers. It's the relationships that matters to us. On the MyFace side, it's helped, of course, but again, it doesn't take away from the importance of the relationship. So yes, it gives us opportunities to try to identify granting opportunities, but it still goes back to, can you get the person on the phone? Or more importantly, can you get the person that works for you to pick up the phone to call the person that you want to speak to, which is a whole nother thing. You know, they haven't answered my email 7 times. Well, pick up the phone and call them. Well, they don't answer my call. Well, call them again.
Mhm.
Right. And so it's those things. So I personally haven't seen a big dramatic shift for us at Toulmin or at MyFace. Now, some of our granting organizations have said how much they love it because they can do a lot of research and they can do proposals and all of that. But I've never heard them say the impact that they've had or made in that process. Because it's, to me, it's always going to go back to relationships. It's always going to lead back to that.
Yes, it is, humanitarian work after all. I think as much as the tech sector might like to remove humans from the process, I think it's unlikely to happen. And I think you've made a very important point for people on both sides of the aisle to hear. And I generally agree. AI has been a very useful tool for us at our work. But before that, Google Meet, which we're talking about now, was a very there have always been new softwares and technologies that have come along that have helped us do our work perhaps a little bit more efficiently. But they're not always the game changers that the people selling the technologies want us to believe that they are. And the fundamentals of this work and any work really largely remain the same. And this has been true since, back when MyFace was founded, there was automation and stuff like that was starting to take people's jobs. Fundamentally, the economy just sort of continues to roll on. People continue to have jobs and to do work and have needs. And I think that's a great answer. I largely agree with you.
Dave, the one thing I'd say is I hope that the people on the side of granting funds could also hear the importance of picking up the phone and telling the person, we're just not interested. And I understand it's a daunting task, because if you are not by invitation only, there's a lot more that you receive. But just one sort of communication would go a long way to allow people to become more productive so that they can help the people that need our help so badly.
Yes. Often you have, and I've been in this position myself, the board or the executive director is telling the grants director, right, get in touch with this person. This is a good fit for us. We need to apply for funding from there. But that foundation is ghosting them, not responding at all. And they, when they ask for an update, they say, sorry, no response. And the boss tells them, we'll call them again, right? And so I think lots of funders don't respond because they don't want to be rude. They don't want to have an awkward conversation. They don't want to waste the time of their applicants. But in fact, they are they are continuing a cycle. This person's just doing their job, and their job is to keep calling you until you answer.
Right.
And and that's one of the reasons why I'm encouraged by more professionals working at the foundation. Right, it would be hard for Virginia Toulmin III, if she existed, right, to have that name and all that weight to be saying no all of the time. I can really understand that. But if we're just working there, hopefully you can build up that skill set to be able to have those conversations.
Yeah, just say, we're not interested at the moment, or it doesn't fit what our mission is at the moment. Check back. Just something to give everyone closure so they can continue.
Well, they can tell their boss, yes, we heard back. They told us we're not a fit.
Right. And that's a great answer.
Do something else at work other than answer that question. I remember, I forget which foundation it was, but early in my career, my boss was convinced that we should apply to such and such foundation, and they black box. I've never spoken to them, never gotten any sort of encounter. And I wasted an awful lot of time trying because my boss was convinced it should happen. If they had one phone call from them telling me it wouldn't, would have allowed me to move on. So is there, we've talked about a lot of stuff today. Is there one thing that in philanthropy, if you had a magic wand, we're going to do a magic wand question.
Okay.
You can wave a magic wand and change something in philanthropy. What would you change?
That it wouldn't be needed, but that's impossible. That's a magic wand.
Well, you've got a magic wand. So yeah. What spell would you get? Would you just fully fund the nonprofits so they wouldn't have to be applying and stuff? They would just have the funding they need when they need it?
No, I think it would be more along the lines of creating opportunities for those receiving the funding to be part of the solution
Mm-hmm.
so that they own it as well.
Mm.
So like a lot of microfinancing, I think would be really awesome, allowing people the opportunity to create their dream by offering them, financing opportunities or options. I think there's one thing that I think is really important for our work. It's to allow people to be part of the solutions. And I think it's really important for us, especially at MyFace, hearing what the community needs and developing the programs around what the community needs is so important.
Yes, I think I agree with that. I'm not sure what I would do with my magic wand. One thing I know is as I said, there are more nonprofits now than ever. If they all had the funding they need, then the competition would become kind of strange at that point. Right? We still do live in a somewhat capitalist society, right? We can't have right everybody who wants to serve their community, right? Can't be the head, can't be the executive director of a
Right.
fully funded nonprofit. Um, and I think I'm not really sure what I would do with my.
It's a tough question.
Unfortunately, we won't ever have to have. Magic wands aren't real.
That's true.
We won't. No one's ever going to give us one. Is there a? We've got just a few more questions.
Sure.
And I can let you go soon. And I hope you have a safe trip.
Thank you.
Is there a story that you find yourself telling often? Perhaps not necessarily one you've told already today, but is there an anecdote you use all the time?
About a program or about Virginia?
About it. So I'll share. There was a woman named Olivia Slocum Sage. She was a very wealthy widower in 1906. Her husband Russell Sage passed away. Ran the Singer Corporation. They made sewing machines.
Mm-hmm.
And she started the Russell Sage Foundation, which is still giving grants today. But before she did, she published a letter in several local newspapers. And the letter said, "I am the wealthiest woman in the world now. My husband's died. Here's my home address. If you need money, send me a letter." No one had ever really done it. Like excess wealth was, the Carnegie's essay on wealth was published just 10 years before that. So the idea of having people who were so wealthy that they had this excess capital that they could give away was fairly new at the time, and she really didn't understand. And I think the word inundated. Every time I hear inundated, I think of the widow Sage. She received almost 50,000 letters over the course of a few weeks, which is more letters than anyone can read. And I tell that story to grant seekers all the time to sort of build some empathy for them, for folks on the other side of the pile, right? If you were to do that, if you were to open up Toulmin and put an application right on your website, you'd probably get too many for 3 guys to read, even 3 guys and a consultant, right? And so I find myself telling that story all the time.
So for me, I think it would have to be our school in Bangkok, Thailand.
Okay.
Because I love to tell the school.
Are you going to Thailand soon?
I am. It'll be our 21st graduating class of nursing assistants. So we have about 500 young nursing assistants in the system working at hospitals in Thailand.
Okay.
So the story I would tell is, Virginia and I saw a problem in Thailand. She would visit there quite often. She loved it there. And I went on a trip with her, and she shared with me that in her vision was that these young girls, when they left the foster care system, have nowhere to go. They have no skills necessary to be able to compete with men. And it's a lot of hard labor in Thailand, in the rice fields, on the shipping boats. And so she said to me, we need to fix this somehow. We can't fix the whole problem, but we can fix enough lives to make a difference. And we sat down and I thought about it. And I said, okay, how about a nursing school? And she said, well, that's not good enough. That's great, but how do we guarantee them jobs? And I said, okay. So we found a person in Thailand that we respected. He was a former Buddhist monk. And we said, can you help us develop the school? And he happened to know a few of the administrators at the hospitals. And I said, this is what we want to do. We want to be able to educate them for a year to become nursing assistants with a reputable college. And it happens to be Siam University. But after graduation, we want them guaranteed a job at one of the hospitals. But more importantly, we want them to have a place to live. So in Thailand, many of the hospitals have dormitories attached to their hospitals. So the program was developed in that the kids go to school, the girls go for 1 year, there's about 20 of them. They're educated, they graduate, they're guaranteed a job, and they have housing, which means that the excess money can be sent home to their local villages. And that money is money that their parents can now use for a better life so that there's more opportunities. So that would be like something like we and I always try to look for is how do you break the cycle? Not just necessarily make a dent in it, but how are you able to create a program that could have true meaning? And it's only 500 and it's only 20 years. I totally can do the math. I totally understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's 500 more lives. And the ripple effect of that is what really matters. And I love to tell that story because it's how we think and how I think when I strategically look at organizations is how can we make a difference? You know, giving money to a food kitchen is great. It's wonderful to give money to a food bank. But how do we help those that are coming into the food bank? How can we materially help them? And sometimes you can't fly in as the white knight. You have to work with local people because those local people have pride and they want to be able to help solve the problem. So that's my story I tell a lot because I just love the story of how she thought and what mattered to her and how we were able to put it into motion.
Very thoughtful and multifaceted solution. I like it very much. And I think one of the things that we do talk about, we didn't talk about it too much today, is the I word, impact. Right? I think for a while in philanthropy, I think before trust-based philanthropy, I think impact was the big buzzword for a while there, and it was in metrics, and they wanted every nonprofit to be able to prove the impact of every gift, right? And I think nurses are a great example there. So you can say we trained 500 nurses, and that's it's an outcome, and that's some impact you can report. You're never going to fully be able to measure the impact of 500 working nurses, right? Because they're going to go on and cure and help countless people, and those people, because they've been made better, are going to be able to go out and have, right? And the ripple effect is just, I think, something that humans can understand. We won't necessarily, and impact is good. It's good to have some quantitative metrics to judge the work and everything, but we can't lose sight of the overall ripples that can be made by philanthropy.
Which is why when I go to Thailand, many of the alumni come back, and I get to meet their little kids now, and it's that matters. That more than anything else, it's not the 20 girls that are going this year. It's all the hundreds of kids that I get to see coming back with their families and their parents, and we have a big night there, and they all come, and it's just it makes it real. It gives you really such a warm heart.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you wanted to talk about today?
I mean, I could talk to you forever. You're so easy to talk to.
Oh, thank you. Nice of you to say.
I don't.
Not everyone agrees, but.
Well, I would like to say that, when we talk about legacy, and I would like to just take one moment on legacy, how do you build Virginia's legacy? Bill, you made this bold statement. You want her to be known as one of the greatest female. How do you do that? And the way we're doing it is through a number of scholarships named after Virginia, primarily in the healthcare area, from, counselors at camps to teachers to nurses. In the arts, there's an entire Virginia B. Toulmin female artist program that we have. And then we just started on a full-length documentary of her life, which is tricky because she's no longer here to contribute. And many of her friends would be in their hundreds now. So it's, over 100. So it's hard to get those stories, but we're piecing it all together by talking to different people. And then the last thing we're doing is we're writing a 8-book series, a children's book series with eight books that we're talking. It's a biographical fiction. So Virginia loved the symphony. So the first book we have is Virginia B goes to the symphony, and it talks about an experience with her grandma, and her grandmother lived with her after her grandfather suddenly died, and the whole idea of family. And the next book is about the airplane because of her husband and the patent. So we're trying to make sure that she's known well beyond my life and the other trustees as really an incredible philanthropist and an incredible woman, which she was. Something that we're really proud of. So legacy is really important to me and to every nonprofit. And I think maybe we sometimes don't have enough time to think about what does it actually mean to be able to create a legacy of someone that you want to be well known forever.
Well, the last question I usually ask folks is, right, if they have a book or something that they want. And it does sound like, so I think this is the first time that the answer has been a children's book. You're going to do a series.
Yes.
First one, what was it again? Where's
Virginia B goes to the symphony.
Oh, very good. And I assume Virginia B will continue going places throughout the series.
Yeah.
That sounds lovely. And there will be there's a documentary.
Yes,
that the enthusiasts can look forward to.
Yeah, we're working. We actually went back to Seymour, Indiana, where she had her plant, and we were working with those that knew her at Central. It's now called Lynette, but Central, and we're giving a grant to the Community Foundation in Jackson County, a very, very a poor area. And the idea is that it's time that we give back to those that gave so much to Virginia, that created this incredible foundation. And the reception that we've received out there is just so beautiful. Again, we're looking at making impact where we believe it's important to create her legacy and do the work that she would have wanted.
Very good. So I think I know one of the things I would do with my magic wand, now that I've had a moment to think about it, is my father was a history professor, and I am in philanthropy, so to speak. And I think I would very much want, particularly Americans, to better understand the importance and history of philanthropy in this country. I think it's sort of just thought of as, rich people writing checks, perhaps not that thoughtfully, ritzy galas and tuxedos and that sort of thing. But in fact, there is, going all the way back to 1906 and before that, an awful lot of thought that has been put into, right, how to move the excess capital that particularly Americans make more money than any other country.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, people from other countries who make money, their money is here in America.
Right.
And sometimes they make more than they need, and and that enables them to do great things. And in the American economy is 20%, 10 to 20%, depending on how you want to define it, nonprofits, people working in nonprofits. And I think there is, if you ask the average American, I think generally they are not that understanding of the importance of this sector, particularly and the thoughtful nature that has gone into creating lasting institutions and legacy, right from the Russell Sage Foundation up until Virginia Toulmin and others. And so I think it's great that you're making a documentary. I hope a lot of people watch it. I hope a lot of people listen to this episode, and if they do listen, that they made it all the way here.
I hope so.
Thank you very much for listening to Bill and I talk for over an hour about philanthropy. Bill, I hope you have a safe flight today.
Thank you.
And I hope that all your giving and grant seeking and grant making goes really well.
Thanks, Dave. Best to you too.
I look forward to seeing you here in Waterville.
Yeah, I'll let you know when I'm there.
Hopefully it's a little bit warmer by then.
I hope so too.